Welcome back. Chapter 4 is a pretty lengthy chapter, so I'm going to go through most of these slides pretty quickly. Once again, if you have any questions, please send a message via either email or in Canvas, and I'll be sure to answer as good as I can. As you can see, there's a lot of different learning objectives in this chapter, so let's get started. First is agency overview. So agency's authority to act in place of another to do a specified act for a stated period of time. So in real estate, obviously, most agency is being a real estate agent. That's the most common one. But you can also be have agency relationship if you're a lender or another party. Okay, the agent is the one who acts for with authority from the other person, and then the principal is the client. Third party would be anybody that the agent works with on behalf of the principal. Okay, so there's a lot of advisories that you have to complete in real estate so that you identify who all the parties are. And in order to do these items, you have to have um, a license to sell or offer to sell, buy or offer to buy, solicit prospective buyers or sellers, negotiate, purchase, sell, loan, or exchange of business opportunities or real estate, and negotiate leases and collect rents. So for all those items, you do have to be licensed. The law of agency applies whenever one person is representing another in a business transaction. So a real estate broker has to comply with the real estate law. Okay, agents have some responsibilities as it pertains to their principals. They must inform the principal of all facts pertaining to handling of the principal's property. So you can't keep things secret or private if it will affect the transaction. You cannot gain monetary interest in the property without the principal's prior consent, and you cannot use the principal's property to his or her own advantage. Okay, so the fiduciary relationship to the principal is honesty, utmost care, integrity, loyalty, obey, and no secret profits. So you have a higher standard of responsibility to your principal than you do to third parties. For the third parties, you only have to be honest and disclose material facts that you know about, have reasonable skill and care, fair dealing, and good faith. So basically, you have to have integrity and be honest with the third parties. Where with the principal, you have to have utmost care and obey any lawful instructions and not make any secret profits off the principal. Okay, so listing agent is the seller's agent. They get the agreement to sell the property. A buyer's agent is the selling agent. Uh, Negotiates the sale of the property. So if you do both, you're a dual agent. And in California, you can represent both the buyer and the seller, although, as you could probably see, that comes with a lot of different issues in itself because it's difficult to represent both parties and be fair to both parties at the same time. Okay, there are certain ways to create an agency relationship: express or written, so that's written, implied, estoppel, and ratification. So express is created, um, which completely and precisely delineates those activities which the agent is authorized to undertake. So express is written. Implied is a third party believes an agent possesses because of the acts or omissions of the principal. Example of this would be like if you're showing a home, the seller will see the buyer with the buyer's agent, and they will imply that there's an agency there, even though they don't have anything in writing yet. Estoppel prohibits the principal from denying that the person is his or her agent if the principal has misled another into believing the person is the agent. And ratification is approval of a transaction that's already taken place. So it's ratified after the transaction's taken place. Okay, so there is a real estate agency disclosure act, and there's forms that go along with that. Each agent whom you have more than a casual relationship, you have to provide disclosure regarding real estate agency relationship form AD. Now, there's a couple versions of the AD form. Typically, when you make your first offer with a buyer, you provide the AD form. If you're listing a property, at that time you provide the AD form to the seller. So at the very beginning stages, you provide that form. Okay. Both listing and selling broker must declare whom they represent. So the seller's agents, buyer's agent, or both, a dual agency. So the only requirement is the listing broker must at least represent the seller. Okay. A law applies to all residential sales. So a buyer does not technically have to have an agent, although that's pretty rare. Okay, agency disclosure steps: disclose, elect, and confirm. So it's a 3-step process. Okay, the next step is a listing package, which would have the AD, which we talked about as the first thing. A possible representative of more than one buyer or seller. So you provide that so that the seller understands that there could be a dual agency situation. Wire fraud and electronic funds transfer advisory, which warns against wire fraud and how to wire money and who to wire it to. The listing agreement, which spells out the terms of the listing, and the seller's advisory, which gives the seller advisory on items that may take place during the transaction. Okay, and this is what the AD form looks like. You can see the check marks for each buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant, and then the agent sign at the bottom. All these forms are in your book and you should review them. And when you review them, if you have any questions on the content, please let me know. Those are the forms that are given to sellers at the time of listing. Okay, so the listing agreement has to be given to sellers when signed, a copy, and couples who are considered one legal person receive one copy. So you don't have to have one for each, the husband and wife, or people who are cohabitating the property. Now, electronic signatures work out the best. I use a website called DocuSign in order to obtain all of my signatures. And the reason that I like it is the second they sign, they also have a copy sent to them, so I don't have to provide it myself. Okay, so the listing agreement is a contract to employ a broker to sell or to do a certain thing for the owner seller. All listings have to be in writing in order to collect a commission. So there's no such thing as an oral listing agreement. Now, there are 5 types of listings in California. The first one's open. Now, this one's rare and you cannot advertise on the MLS. It basically states any agent or any broker can bring a buyer to a listing. That's why there's no time limit, and the owner, if they find their own buyer, they pay no commission. So I've never actually seen an open listing. There's really no reason to do one. Now, exclusive agency, only the listing brokers entitled to a commission. So there's only one broker that can earn the commission. However, if the buyer or the seller finds a buyer on their own, then they're not required to pay the broker. And that one's also rarely used. Now, the exclusive right to sell listing is the typical listing. Now, what that means is there's a start date, termination date, and only one broker is allowed to sell the property, And even if the owner finds their own buyer during that period of time, then the broker still gets a commission. Now, a net listing is an interesting thing. So, an example of a net listing would be if you list the property for $350,000. Now, anything, and that would be the minimum the owner wants. Anything over that number, the 350, then that becomes commission. So if you're able to sell it for 370, the difference of $20,000 would be your commission. And that's very rarely used. I've never seen one. Option listing gives the broker the opportunity to purchase the property at the end or during the listing agreement. Now you might see this offered as broker agrees to pay 90% of list price if the property doesn't sell, something like that. So if you offer the property for $500,000 and you're unable to sell the property, then at some point the broker would purchase the property for $450,000. That's the only way that I've ever seen it done. Okay, the MLS is the system that we input our listings on so that all sub-agents and cooperating brokers can see that a property is for sale. Now, the websites are right here. These are the websites that the public can see for those for the MLS. A cooperating broker is basically the other broker, buyer's broker. Okay, pocket listing. So when the market is hot and there's a lot of buyers and not so many sellers, sometimes what listing agents will do is they will keep that listing within their own office and they won't put it into the MLS. Because there's so many buyers, they know that they could find one on their own in a short amount of time, and their seller won't know the difference. That's actually wrong, and it shouldn't be done, but it does happen, and it's generally called a pocket listing. Okay, commissions. Broker must provide buyer who's ready, willing, and able to buy. And commission rate is negotiable. It's never standard. When I started my career, standard was like 6%. Now it's more like 5 or 4.5 even in some situations. So it just depends, but commission is always negotiated. If a seller backs out, the commission can be earned as long as you can demonstrate that you had a ready, willing, and able buyer. So that's why as a seller, you don't list a property that you don't actually intend to sell, because if somebody brings you a buyer, then that agent has earned their commission. The transfer disclosure statement was brought on by this case, Easton versus Strasburger, where the court, it's a court case that established a need for agents to visually inspect the property for red flags and disclose their findings to their client. So this is the form. The seller must complete this form and indicate everything that's wrong with the property. And it should be filled out and signed completely by the seller at the time of the listing. And since the seller is the one that's most familiar, he or she must be encouraged to be forthright and honest about all known defects. Now, the seller's agent will also make a visual, diligent inspection, fill out the TDS, and there's also a separate form for the agent to fill out. Now, this says the buyer should receive it before making a written offer. That doesn't happen. Okay, so typically within 7 days of making an offer and getting acceptance, that's when you receive the TDS. But the buyer's agent also inspects the property and they fill out their section of the statement and sign it on the TDS. And there's also an AVID form that both agents have to fill out, and that goes over the physical condition of the property as well. And this is the AVID form that the agent has to complete. And basically it walks the agent through a visual inspection of the property where you have to indicate all the things that you see that are wrong in the property, and also identify certain things like what type of flooring there is and things of that nature, so that the buyer and seller can understand that you did do a visual inspection of the property. The next section is broker's responsibility. Trust accounts brokers have to accept deposits. I've never actually used a trust account because it does get messy and sticky, and this is one of the ways that a broker can get themselves into trouble. So any broker accepting money is required to either A, give it to the principal, place it in a trust account, or give it to escrow company. Now, instead of taking deposits, usually a deposit is wired straight into escrow. Commingling is mixing funds of a principal and a licensee together. That's wrong. And conversion is misappropriating and use of clients' funds by a licensee. So that's taking somebody's deposit and using it for something that the client doesn't benefit from. So like paying rent or paying for supplies or anything of that nature, that's conversion. All transaction files must be kept for 3 years. And then salespeople are normally independent contractors. So you get paid on a commission basis. If you don't sell anything, you don't get paid. Agents must pay all of their own taxes. So income tax, state income tax, Social Security, disability insurance, workers' compensation, federal unemployment insurance, and state unemployment insurance. If you want to have those items, you have to pay it on your own. Brokers must have written contract with each licensed member of the sales staff. And a copy of that contract is retained by all parties for 3 years from the date of termination. So even if you leave a brokerage firm, they have to keep your contract for 3 years past that. The DRE has a website set up where you would indicate who's employing you, and then the broker has to go in and confirm that they've hired you. So if you leave a broker, the broker must notify DRE within 10 days. And then the new broker, when you transfer, has to notify or actually confirm that you're employed with them within 5 days. Okay, so if you're an agent and you're selling your own property, you have to disclose the fact you're licensed. You have to state it in all written contracts and inform your own brokers. And then some brokers even have their own in-house requirements. A power of attorney is allowing another person to act as the principal. So it's not an agent, you're actually acting as the person. And then attorney in fact is a general power of attorney, an agent who may have the power to transact all of the principal's businesses. Any civil injury or wrong committed on a person or his property is called a tort. So that's why you might hear the term tort law. Misrepresentation is an untrue statement in order to influence the outcome of a sale. And then puffing is a statement of opinion that exaggerates a property's benefits. So an example of puffing, it would be like, oh, this is the best neighborhood in this area, or the local elementary school here is really good. Things that make an area seem that would seem better than it maybe is, but it's not so bad that it can be proven untrue. It could still be a statement of opinion. So there's innocent, negligent, and fraudulent misrepresentation. Secret profit is when a broker receives an illegal payment and that violates a fiduciary relationship. You're not allowed to do certain things with your clients, so you can't force them to use certain services if you get a kickback from that and stuff and things of that nature, because you're not allowed to make a profit without your client knowing. There's express and implied warranty. Express is a written listing exists between the seller and broker. Implied is if a seller or broker shows the property with the seller's consent, then you have implied. Okay, disclosure of AIDS and death. So an occupant's death from AIDS or AIDS-related illness is a highly emotional issue, and you should not disclose the actual disease or the reason the person passed away unless it was a suicide or a homicide. Those two things, people would probably feel differently about a property if that happened. However, you only have to disclose that if it happened within the last 3 years. So if a death on a property happened more than 3 years ago, then no disclosure is necessary. Okay, and these are ways that an agency relationship are terminated. These are the ways, the reasons for termination of agency. Some are operation of law, so the expiration of agreements, destruction of property, or death of a broker or seller. All of those things terminate an agency by law, or acts. So agreement is an act, revocation of listing by seller, close of escrow, and renouncement of the listing broker. All those things are acts. All of those things terminate an agency relationship. The next section is the rise of the mobile office. So mobile devices have changed how real estate's done. Smartphones are now essential, and buyers now expect agents to be available 24 hours a day and to respond to requests immediately. This wasn't the case prior to having smartphones. Normally you set appointments and you talk to your clients on a schedule, but now realistically you're available all day, every day. Now there are all kinds of phone apps that people use in order to be more productive and provide information to their clients. There's also cloud services that you could share and collaborate on files and documents using services that take advantage of the cloud. You now have contracts on your phone. DocuSign, VeriSign, Digital Ink are all apps that make life easier for all of us. At the beginning of my career, I have to drive up to an hour to get a signature, and now I could get a signature within seconds on my phone. So again, if you have any questions about anything that was covered today, please reach out in Canvas or email me. And that is chapter 4. So we're moving along quickly. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out, and I hope you found the video useful. Thank you.